Roy Shaw, aka Pretty Boy Shaw, is best known for a ferocious trilogy of fights with Lenny McLean and the years he spent in prison fighting the system, from London's ancient high security prisons to the infamous Broadmoor mental facility. But what about Roy's early years? Today in episode 1, we look at his time in a Welsh Borstal becoming the daddy after taking on the two hardest lads in the jail, then his role in the violent escape that made headline news. We take the following explosive extract from the book Roy Pretty Boy Shaw, link in the description. I was put on a coach with 8 other cons, all of us having been sentenced to a Borstal. The dim ones went to Feltham in Middlesex, and the more uncontrollable ones were taken to the secure Borstal at Usk in Wales. The journey to Wales was a long one. I saw plenty of sheep on the way, but not much else. I arrived at the Borstal around midday. It was divided up into 2 sections, one being the camp and the other the jug. The day I arrived, there happened to be a boxing match between the camp and the jug. I couldn't believe my luck. I told one of the screws that I'd done some boxing in the army. "Oh, have you?" he said. "Let's see what you can do now." He put me into spar with the toughest boy of the camp, who was known as the Daddy, but 2 murderous left hooks, and he was down. Then the screws brought in the Daddy of the jug. He laughed and said, "You can have it with me now." I didn't bother sparring with him either. I attacked him with cold, controlled ferocity, knocking him spark out. I raised my arms in victory because I was the daddy of both camps now. Although the daddies had a reputation for being bullies, I had no intention of becoming a bully myself. A look from me was enough to get what I wanted. And being a daddy had certain advantages, like other inmates making me a cup of tea and generally being at my beck and call. I was not only the daddy of the Borstal, but I was doing the governor a favour by keeping order. There was no fighting, no bullying. I wouldn't allow it. If there was anything or anyone to take care of, I would be the one to do it. The governor recognised my capabilities and the unofficial power I had. He knew it was in his best interest to keep me sweet. Well, after all, I was practically doing his job. I was allocated some work outside the Borstal, cutting down trees in the nearby forest. The man in charge of the works detail was a tough bastard, with hands like shovels. He was a typical forester, all tartan shirts and chainsaw. He thought all the boys from Borstal were no good toe rags and took great delight in working them till he dropped. Well, I knew his little game, and I also knew what he was up to. The other boys might have been lazy little tykes, but not me. The harder I worked, the harder Chainsaw Charlie pushed. And the harder Chainsaw Charlie pushed, the harder I worked. Old Charlie may well have been chopping down trees for 40 years or more, and I may well have been a jumped up little cockney, but he couldn't deny that I was able to keep up with him tree for tree, and within a week we became friends. He even gave me one of his tartan shirts. All in all, I had things pretty much under control at the Borstal. I had a good job, my little yes man running errands, extra visits from my mum and the governor, more or less in my pocket. Life for me was relatively simple, until, that is, I met Flapper, Stern, and Roy Buckley, the new boys. They were flash, streetwise tough nuts, and I liked them instantly. Flapper, as he was known because of the size of his ears, was a wannabe gangster. He had all the mannerisms of the movie star James Cagney, who always played gangsters in the black and white films. Flapper held his elbows to his side as if he was holding his trousers up, and spoke through gritted teeth, calling everyone, "You dirty rat," and said yeah after everything he said. "I'm making a break for it, yeah. I'm heading for the bright lights of London, and the dirty rats will never find us, yeah. There's plenty of booze, birds, and fast cars, yeah. They won't never find me there, yeah. Come with us, Roy, yeah. Come with us." He kept on and made escaping sound so good that eventually I agreed to go with him. And on the spur of the moment, I said, "Count me in. Yeah, I'll have some of that. Yeah." It was frightening. I was even starting to sound like Flapper. The plan was for us to escape into Borstal's doctor's car. For a week, we watched the doctor's movements, clocking him park his car in the same spot in the rear of his surgery. Every Monday, he held a nighttime surgery, and the following Monday, we made ready for our escape. Flapper, Buckley, and I waited in the surgery until it was finished, then sneaked out of our dormitory. We hid behind the doctor's green Morris Minor and waited for him to come out. His keys jangled as he locked his surgery for the night. We kept as quiet and as still as we could. "I'll do him," I said. "I'll bash him over the head." "Yeah, that's it. Do the dirty rat," growled Flapper. Flapper was beginning to irritate me. There's only so much James Cagney a man can take. I gave him a sideways glance and tutted. Effing James Cagney. I didn't know whether to hit him or the doctor. There was a time and a place to muck about, but not when you're about to cave someone's skull in. The doctor fumbled to unlock his car. I started to feel anxious. My heart was pounding and my mouth felt dry. I clenched my fist so tight it turned my knuckles white. The doctor dropped his car keys on the ground, bent down to pick them up, and as I stood up, I punched him in the back of the head. He fell as if he had been filleted. His body slithered down the car. Quickly, we grabbed him and dragged him behind the dustbins. I jumped the driver's seat, rammed the car into gear, and sped out of the Borstal, heading towards London. Now, I didn't realise that driving a Morris Minor would be quite so different from driving a 3-ton lorry I was used to. I pushed, pulled, and crunched the gears. Flapper leaned over the front seat and said, "Roy, it's a gearbox, not an effing jukebox." "Shut up, Cagney, I'm driving." By the time we reached Oxford, the car ran out of petrol. It was Buckley's bright idea to get away from the main road and find a railway station. It was midnight and a light rain began to fall as we made our way across the open fields. Soon we became caked in mud and could barely lift our feet. We ran through the brambles and through the bushes, through ditches and over fences, until we reached a railway crossing. We clambered aboard an open coal train, hoping it was going in the right direction. By the time we jumped off, we were as black as coal. I looked at Flapper. He no longer looked like James Cagney, more like Al Jolson. When we finally reached London, we decided to split up and go our separate ways. And to be honest, I'd had just about enough of their company. So that was Roy Shaw's Borstal stay, in his own words, knocking out the two prison daddies, or whatever you want to call them, in Borstal, having an easy time of it, looking after things for the governor, and then some lads come in who he befriends, and they all decide to escape, which probably in retrospect wasn't the best move because he had an easy time in there. So they escape, they knock out a prison doctor, or Roy knocks out a prison doctor, they get away. Now, where I've left it, not long after that, the lads he was with, they all get caught. Roy disappears. His family look after him in the East End of London, and he starts boxing under the name Roy West. And in the second episode, I'm going to cover a big boxing fight he had, his first one, under the name Roy West against a good standard boxer. Then we'll look at how he made a name for himself in the pubs, some of the fights he got into, which have been chronicled, and him getting into serious armed robbery and criminality, which he did. Then we'll look at his first big prison sentence, which was for a bakery robbery and robbing some taxi drivers. Very well covered in the press. I've got loads of information on it. It was, in retrospect, that was just stupid. It was just a drunken thing. He didn't get caught for the bigger stuff he was doing at the time. But that was his first real taste of man's prison, not Borstal. And then he comes out, and we'll look at the big robbery that he did, the bullion robbery, where he got weighed off big time, to finish this section on his early life. So thank you for listening. If you liked it, smash the likes out. And until next time,